I've noticed that it's felt very different when I've worked at small, medium, and large companies. In this video, I'm going to try to explain the underlying principles about not only why they feel different, but why they have to feel different. I'm hoping it'll help you understand any organization you work in, be it your work or a sport club you frequent or even a charity you volunteer at. And once you understand why these organizations feel the way they feel, hopefully you can start to see where your expectations mismatch and where the opportunities of the size of that organization lie. So, what do companies feel like? As someone who's worked in all of them, small companies at their best moments feel frantic and energetic. At their worst, it feels like you are watched every second and any creativity is stifled. In medium-sized companies, at their best, they feel stable and you can see where you can improve. At their worst, there is a lot of politics. Large companies at their best feel impactful and give you opportunities at scale that you would never find anywhere else. At their worst, they feel bureaucratic and like there are invisible walls everywhere that impede your progress. In order to understand where these feelings come from, I'm going to use two games to understand them: RimWorld and Victoria 3. The amount of time I've played RimWorld, it's been amazing. Because I can showcase the very small companies all the way up to the medium-sized companies. Victoria 3, I'll use to showcase the big boys. So let's start with RimWorld. In the beginning of a RimWorld game, the most pressing problem is always personal. The problem has a face. RimWorld begins with a few survivors. They need food, shelter, medicine, sleep, security, labor, and enough emotional stability to avoid punching the components you needed for the freezer. The early colony feels like a startup because a real startup looks exactly this fragile. There are too few people, almost no slack, and every mistake travels faster than the team can absorb it. A bad cook spreads food poisoning through the colony. Someone insults the cook in the dining room, and suddenly the colony's food supply is indirectly connected to a social fight. Small groups begin as dependency webs long before anyone draws an org chart. A dependency web means each person's condition changes everyone else's chance of surviving the week. If the doctor sleeps at the wrong time, someone may die. If the grower breaks, the danger arrives later as an empty pantry. A wounded hunter turns into a meat shortage before anyone calls it a supply chain problem. RimWorld turns that into visible pressure. Just like this pressure happens in small startups. It's a feature, not a bug. The dependency is very clearly observable. And it also creates a clear boundary. Who is part of the group and who isn't? That creates the group. The environment forces the survivors together. In order to survive, they have to depend on others and also coordinate with each other. In small groups, coordination often happens through mutual adjustment. People adapt because they can see what other people need. The cook notices the meal count. The builder sees a broken wall. Research stops because there's a fire in the storeroom. And someone has to haul medicine before the bleeding pawn becomes a corpse. Nobel Prize winner Elinor Ostrom gives us the language for this kind of local order. We secretly already saw two of her criteria that are necessary for small groups to organize. She studied how small groups govern shared resources without assuming every problem needs market competition or top-down command. RimWorld's early colony is full of shared resources: food, medicine, labor time, defensive space, bed space, and clean rooms. A bedroom may be private. A dirty kitchen becomes everybody's food poisoning problem. I think of the tragedy of the commons, which states that people with shared resources inevitably destroy these resources through overuse or lack of maintenance. In practice, that does happen, but we also see situations where that doesn't happen. So, where there are dependencies, a distinct small group, and local alignment, there is an opportunity to create rules. Like who gets medicine first, who's allowed to cook, who stays out of dangerous zones. etc. And that doesn't mean all the rules are good, mind you. A rule can stabilize the colony or wreck it faster. A food policy that ignores starvation, I'd call that bad governance. Wasting glitter world medicine on a bruise is bad governance. Assigning doctoring to someone with no skill, you guessed it, bad governance. Ostrom's lesson is far more clear than small groups make the rules. Now, there are parts of RimWorld that doesn't really fit well as an analogy, because as a player, you have a lot of agency to force your group to adhere to rules. In the real world, the rules need to be enforced as well, and in order to do that, the rest of the group needs to monitor the others to follow the rules. In RimWorld, you are the one that can monitor and enforce all the rules. In reality, everyone needs to do that. This is the reason that social control is so important and prevalent in small groups. You see, if you fall outside of the inner circle or come into the group at a later date, it can feel extremely controlling and like you're being stifled. There's a reason that evolutionarily we are deeply hardwired to immediately notice exclusion, and it physically pains us. In the past, being excluded from your small group was a social death sentence. The same seems to hold true today. If you feel like you are excluded in a small group, start looking for other groups to join. Conversely, if you are in a small group, make a lot of effort to fit in. Your social survival depends on it. A good rule of thumb to check if you are on the inside is when you can help revise the rules of the group. If you work in a small organization, your team probably already has rules that are absent from the handbook. The team has its own shadow handbook, you see. Who gets called when the customer is angry, which report is fake precision, which process step exists because one executive got embarrassed 2 years ago. Those informal rules are clues. They show where the formal system is incomplete. Direct instruction eventually runs out of reach. At first, we the players can click everything. Prioritize tending, prioritize hauling, equip that rifle, rescue the downed pawn, build the wall before the cold snap kills the crops. And that works while the colony is small. Then as you grow, there's too many jobs, too many pawns, too many items on the ground, too many fires, raids, infections, tantrums, traders, prisoners, animals, crops, and power failures. I know that when I'm playing, I start replacing memory with rules. Allowed areas, home zones, stockpile priorities, food restrictions, medicine defaults, work priorities, bills, schedules. A zone is a rule with geography attached. Stockpiles decide where the colony believes things belong, and work priorities decide whose labor responds first. The people remain. Coordination starts living outside any one person's head. A good small organization learns this before it breaks. The founder cannot be the only memory bank. The team cannot rely on, oh, Maya usually handles that. Maya gets sick, goes on vacation, or finally quits after carrying invisible work for too long. Small teams, in my experience, romanticize informality. They say, oh, we don't need a process, we're small, we just talk. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes the process exists, but it traps inside the most responsible person. RimWorld punishes that. If medicine is stored across the map because you never built a medical stockpile, the infection timer doesn't care about your intentions. If nobody is assigned to doctoring, colonists will get left untreated. If the butchered table sits beside the stove, the colony pays for the layout through food poisoning. Small groups create rules when repeated coordination through memory becomes too challenging. Slowly but surely, the rules become ingrained, no longer revisable and beyond the grasp of the romanticization of the informal. That is when the colony reaches mid-game. The colony has moved past 3 terrified crash survivors sleeping in a wooden box. Now there are bedrooms, crop zones, storage rooms, etc. The player's attention changes. Early on, you watch the pawns. By mid-game, I'm watching the system that routes the pawns. Mintzberg makes the mid-game less vague. Calling this quote-unquote more procedure is too crude. The real question is how the work gets coordinated. Early coordination relies on mutual adjustment. People adapt because the situation is visible. Direct supervision comes next. Player points at the task and forces the action. Then, direct supervision saturates. Too many colonists, benches, ingredients, rooms, injuries, fires, and raids compete for attention. The colony turns to standardization. A bill tells a workbench what to produce. Cook simple meals until you have 30 meals. Use ingredients within this radius. Pause when satisfied. Assign skilled workers and bring the meals to a stockpile. The bill is boring in the exact way management becomes boring once it starts working. It removes repeated conversation and depersonalizes the process. You can stop asking, "Oh, can someone make the meals?" The system maintains meal supply under defined conditions. The work still belongs to a person. Coordination now belongs to procedure, and conversation is no longer necessary. It makes the process way more efficient. But if you love that informal social flexibility, this can feel like a loss. Some people thrive in startups and hop from startup to startup for this reason. They love the informal processes and loathe the structured impersonal. Some entrepreneurs do the same. Great at leading startups, but as soon as we need to go to the medium scale, they hate this. You will see the same when going from medium organizations to large organizations. Back to RimWorld, where everything now gets a place and a process. Now you've stopped deciding every hauling action. You define where materials belong. Medicine near the hospital, food near the freezer, chunks outside the walking path, weapons in the armory, corpses far away from anyone who still has emotional stability. The player becomes less like a battlefield commander and more like a process designer. This is the normal organization phase. Mutual adjustment still exists, don't get me wrong. Direct supervision still helps in emergencies. The load shifts towards standardized work, standardized outputs, and standardized skills because the player cannot personally touch every task. This can also feel like a loss. Just like the employee we talked about earlier, for a leader, a lot more distance is created at this level. You can no longer delude yourself into thinking you are one of the guys. You are now the manager with employees. The distance was always there, but there is no denying that existence anymore. Early RimWorld stories are personal. You remember the pawn who saved everyone. You remember the one who snapped and burnt the food supply. You remember the doctor who operated with no sleep. Mid-game can feel colder. That coldness helps the colony survive. If every meal requires a heroic decision, the colony is badly managed. If every hospital response depends on you noticing a tiny alert in time, the system's probably not going to work out very well. If every production chain needs personal intervention, the organization has only accumulated tasks. It hasn't learned anything. The difference between the small and medium organizations is that the small organizations people learn. In medium organization, the actual organization has the ability to learn. The organization becomes an organism. It becomes more than the sum of its parts. Within the medium organization, we have many small organizations. Not everything is optimized. There are still things that are handled in the small way. That is the brilliance of medium-sized organizations. What is possible to optimize gets optimized. That which is not possible to optimize is still done in the small organizational way. Don't believe me? Well, answer the following question for me. Which recurring problem in your team is still being handled like a unique emergency? Think. The weekly reporting scramble, the client handoff, the quality review, the hiring approval, the inventory check, the customer escalation. If the same emergency repeats, it has become a missing coordination mechanism. All these can be optimized, of course. Maybe in your organization, you do have procedures that work, which can bring its own pitfall. Once procedure works, managers start trusting procedure more than social interaction. That brings us to Victoria 3. Let's use Victoria 3 as an analogy to use to make us feel what it's like if we only focus on the optimized parts of the medium level. In the same way that the small doesn't disappear at the medium level doesn't disappear at the large level. It's just the focus changes. Victoria 3 governs society through categories and flows, not personal familiarity. Using my time playing Victoria 3, I've put together a list of all of the things that, through the course of the game, I've been asked to observe and keep track of. Buildings, production methods, goods, market prices, wages, qualifications, infrastructure, tax capacity, bureaucracy, legitimacy, radicals, loyalists, and interest group clout. People have not disappeared from the world. They have disappeared from direct administrative perception. You no longer see Elinor the miner who is angry because bread is expensive and the mine is dangerous. You no longer see the process of the stockpiles and how things get done. You see laborers, machinists, peasants, shopkeepers, capitalists, clergy, aristocrats, armed forces, trade unions, industrialists, standard of living, radicalism, clout, wages, qualifications, and prices as one group. A number on a spreadsheet. The person becomes a pop. The grievance becomes radicalism. The food problem becomes grain price. The political argument becomes interest group approval. The state's ability to act becomes bureaucracy. The large organization can no longer act on the personal or procedural level in the same way that in Victoria 3, you cannot determine how the factories produce their goods. So that leaves us with the question of how does the large organization act? Weber gives the administrative version of the same problem. Bureaucracy coordinates through offices, hierarchy, technical competence, written records, and impersonal processing. Weber's world, the office outlasts the person and procedures occupying it. The romanticization of the informal is lost at the medium level. The romanticization of efficiency is lost at the large level. The small and medium organizations react to outside reality. The large organization dictates outside reality. I find this to be very cold, but it's also very powerful. Without administration, large systems collapse into favoritism, memory failure, informal privilege, and local improvisation. With administration, people become easier to process than to understand. Victoria 3 puts that trade directly on the screen. You cannot click every hungry person. You cannot personally resolve every workplace grievance. You cannot persuade every faction through a direct conversation. You act through institutions. You pass laws, you expand government administration, you change production methods. You build infrastructure. You manage taxation. You subsidize industries. You shift the construction queue. You read the market. We as the player get our power from accepting distance. This is what we mean when we say that we lose the romanticization of efficiency. In the medium organization, efficiency is God. It's the goal of all goals. At the large level, the reality is that local inefficiencies can create bigger advantages at a higher level. It doesn't really matter if that process that is more efficient can't be scaled up. At the large level, it's better to have an inefficient process that can be scaled up and replicated to 100 times, rather than an efficient process that can only be done in one particular way. You can immediately feel the problem with this. The danger, at least for me, is dashboard hallucination. Dashboard hallucination happens when the numbers are accurate enough to be useful and incomplete enough to mislead. And I actually covered this topic earlier when I was talking about how Goodhart's law can mess with your interpretation of KPIs. Standard of living rises while one region is collapsing. Customer satisfaction looks stable while one support team absorbs rage. Productivity improves while defects move downstream. Attrition looks acceptable, while the people leaving are the ones with knowledge the system's never tagged correctly. At the small level, we have learned that not all people are exchangeable after all. A bureaucracy can see more than a person. It can also miss what only a person would notice. On the other hand, the size of the organization means that they can influence the outside of the organization much more easily. Some resources that are easily scaled up, like money, are readily available for use. Other medium-sized organizations will contort themselves and their procedures to fit your demand. Small organizations will contort themselves to an extent that if you work with them, you can dictate insane terms. The large organization becomes the food source for the smaller company. You are their RimWorld environment. Interestingly, we have an interesting side note that we can explain as well. The transition between the medium-sized organization and large-size organizations in game development. This transition is notoriously difficult for game designers, and it's exactly why we had to switch our case studies from RimWorld to Victoria 3 when talking about large corporations. Designers know how to build the road from a small squad to an efficient, automated colony. In games like RimWorld, automating your survival is intuitive. But the step after automation, moving from a well-oiled machine to a massive, macro-level grand strategy, is a different beast entirely. It's the Excel spreadsheet level of complexity. Because this shift isn't intuitive, designers don't prepare for it, and players end up with a game that becomes unplayable at scale. Game designers intuitively understand local optimization, like efficiency, automation, but struggle to design for macro-scale systems, like bureaucracy or grand strategy, because the mechanics shift from tangible gameplay to abstract data management. If game designers have a problem with holistically creating this from the ground up, it stands to reason that this next step isn't easy in real life either. Now, let's walk through this from small to large in the real world, shall we? Rex here runs Harbor Line Medical Logistics. At the beginning, it consisted of 8 people in a rented warehouse near, let's say Cleveland, Ohio. The company delivers temperature-sensitive diagnostic kits to small clinics. The kits have to stay within a narrow temperature range. If packaging fails, the clinic can't use the kit. If delivery is late, appointments get canceled. If the wrong lot number goes to the wrong site, compliance becomes a problem. In the first year, Rex knows everything personally. He knows Maya can rescue a bad rural route because she knows every clinic manager by name. He knows Lewis should not handle the freezer alone after 4 p.m. because he rushes closing tasks. He knows Dana can pack faster than anyone, but she gets sloppy when support keeps interrupting her. This is Rex in RimWorld early game. Survival is the priority. The shared resources are obvious. Freezer space, packing time, driver capacity, clinic trust, replacement inventory, and Rex's attention. The team creates local rules because failure hurts immediately. Open only one freezer door at a time, keep emergency gel packs near the west bench, put damaged labels in the red bin, call Maya before rerouting rural clinics. No one changes a delivery window without telling support. Rex does not call this governance, he calls it how we avoid disaster. Then Harbor Line grows. 8 people become 47. There are 2 shifts, more drivers, more clinics, more products, and more compliance checks. Rex can no longer know every route exception personally. He can't remember every clinic preference. He can't inspect every cooler. Competence now needs structure around it. Rex has entered RimWorld's mid-game. He creates packaging procedures, inventory zones, escalation rules, delivery windows, a cold chain checklist, a shift lead role, a division between packing and route dispatch, and a quality review step before kits leave the warehouse. Procedure becomes stored learning. Rex sees the danger too. The checklist prevents ruined kits, but it slows experienced packers. The shift lead clarifies accountability, but people feel controlled. The delivery dashboard helps Rex see delays, but it pressures dispatchers to mark ambiguous cases as resolved. The same procedure enables and constrains. If Rex removes the procedure, the company returns to chaos. If Rex worships the procedures, the company becomes stupid. So he adds a rule about rules. Every recurring exception gets reviewed by the people closest to the work before the procedure changes. Local knowledge feeds the operating structure. Then, lo and behold, Harbor Line becomes national. Now Rex serves clinics in 23 states. He has regional warehouses, compliance officers, HR systems, procurement dashboards, customer tiers, carrier contracts, state licensing requirements, and quarterly board pressure. He no longer manages a team, he administers a system, which means Rex is now playing Victoria 3. Employees appear in categories: drivers, packers, supervisors, support, compliance, warehouse associates. Clinics appear in tiers, regions appear in performance dashboards, failures appear as defect rates, late delivery percentages, spoilage costs, overtime attrition, and customer churn. Rex acts through administrative levers. Change the routing policy, increase freezer capacity, revise the training requirement, add compliance review, alter customer prioritization, shift budget between regions. Centralize procurement, decentralize exception handling. He cannot run the national company as if it were still 8 people in a warehouse. On the other hand, if he only trusts the dashboard, he becomes a dangerous idiot. 1 month, the Southwest region looks better. Late deliveries are down, spoilage is down, labor cost is down. The spreadsheet says the region is healthy. Then, 3 senior dispatchers quit in 2 weeks. Well, Rex scrambles to ask why. The dashboard had hidden the mechanism. The regional manager had reduced late deliveries by downgrading hard clinic requests before they became official exceptions. Complaints moved into support. Risky routes were avoided near cutoff times. The numbers improved because the pain moved. Clinics were angrier. Support was overloaded. Dispatchers absorbed the abuse. The region looked efficient because the dashboard didn't measure transferred stress. That is the Victoria 3 warning. Administrative categories are necessary. They do not automatically preserve reality. So how does this all fit together? At startup scale, ask whether local rules fit the real work. At medium organization scale, ask whether procedures carry learning or merely create compliance. At large organization scale, ask whether the dashboard can see transferred pain. The pattern is now visible. Growth hides the human system under coordination machinery. RimWorld early game shows small groups as dense interpersonal systems under scarcity. RimWorld mid-game shows the shift from direct supervision to operating structure. Victoria 3 shows people becoming administratively visible as categories, flows, pressures, offices, and state capacities. Use the coordination replacement test. What can we still know directly? What have we turned into a rule? What have we turned into a role? What have we turned into an office? What have we turned into a dashboard? What have we turned into a category? Then ask the question most managers avoid. How does the problem at the highest level impact all the layers that are below it? With this framework, you can, at the very least, start investigating the answer to this question. I'd like to take the time to thank everyone on Reddit that helped with this conversation and our Discord where we discuss these topics before they go live. Please, if you could, like, share, and subscribe if you found any value in this video. But if you really want to help the channel, click on one of these videos. We'll see you next week with new insights and games here on Tactical Mindscapes. Thank you for watching.